This episode is brought to you by Palmolive. Family time isn't just the big moments. It's weeknight dinners, sitting around the table, everyone talking all at once. So when the plates are empty and the sink is full, use Palmolive Ultra. Palmolive's most powerful formula removes up to 99.9% of grease, leaving your dishes sparkling clean. And the new convenient pump makes cleaning even easier, so you can spend less time tackling dishes and more time together. Shop now at palmolive.com.
Last night, you spent 2 hours deciding what to wear to the party. This morning, it'll take you 2 minutes to list it on Depop and make your money back. Just grab your phone, snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. The sheer dress and platform heels you'll never wear again? There's a birthday girl searching for them right now. Your one-and-done look is about to pay for your next night out. Or at least the ride home. Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Makkai, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Rumaan Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. When Jane Kim learns that her Korean immigrant mother has rented an illegal apartment in San Francisco, leaving her husband and their home in Napa Valley, the world that Jane felt she understood begins to tilt. That tilt reveals fractures that run along the very foundation of her family. Korean Americans driven by their parents to establish themselves in the United States economically and culturally. Add to this her father's sudden revelation that his longtime fantasy has been a long-haul trucking route and that he will soon be on the open road. And her brother Kevin, recipient of their mother's constant praise and their father's never-ending judgment, has dropped out of college and taken a job on the police force, where an act of incomprehensible violence will make visible an even greater schism. Cruel certainties in Jane's life, even the cruelest certainties in Jane's life, now feel like wisps of smoke. Thus begins Lisa Lee's debut novel, American Han, a story of a family that is desperate to outrun the pain of past choices, the present of American racism, and the future of disappointments, filial and otherwise. Jane herself has struggled to find comfort in an identity that stands apart from her parents' expectations. She enrolls in and then drops out of law school, a career path that was one of the few acceptable ones for her parents. She keeps her love life entirely secret from her family and carries anger and bewilderment at her parents' clear favoritism for her brother, who is ironically much less capable of putting up the facade of successful assimilation. As past traumas are revealed, Jane finds herself deeply uncomfortable with the understanding of all her parents have sacrificed for her well-being, even as that sacrifice has been expressed as criticism and scorn. How then to make whole a family riven by the disappointments of the immigrant experience? Can you love a family that is never satisfied with who you are and what you desire? Can you pay tribute to parents' sacrifices while abhorring their treatment of you? And what to do about an adopted country that will never see you as homegrown, no matter your successes, no matter your fluency in the language of the model minority. The urgent and in many ways unanswerable questions guide a novel that handles the macro and micro immigrant experience with the texture and nuance that is due to any fully lived human life. And if no question is fully answered, that may indeed be the point, and a reason that the reader feels richer for having lived a time with the Kim family. Lisa Lee is the recipient of the Marianne Russo Emerging Writer Award from the Key West Literary Seminar, an Emerging Writer Fellowship from the Center for Fiction, and a Pushcart Prize. She has received additional fellowships and awards from Kundiman, Millay Arts, Hedgebrook, the Rona Jaffe Foundation, Tin House, Gentile Artists Residency, the Korea Foundation, and others. Her work has appeared in Plowshares, Vita, Women in Literary Arts, North American Review, Sycamore Review, and elsewhere. She holds an MFA from the University of Houston and a PhD in creative writing and literature from the University of Southern California. She lives in Los Angeles and grew up in Napa, California. Welcome to Burned by Books, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. I want to start off by talking a little bit about the cover, which I really love. And it's this really amazing kind of picture that manages to be both a pair of chopsticks holding a single leaf of cabbage kimchi, but also a conflagration of flame sort of rising up out of the book cover. And I wonder if you would talk a little bit about how that came to be and whether you had any hand in kind of guiding it.
No, I did not. I didn't have any part in coming up with that amazing graphic for the cover. It was designed by Jaya Miceli. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, if it's Miceli or Miceli, who's an artist and graphic designer and does some really great book covers. And if people want to go take a look at her book covers, you can see them on her website and on Instagram. But yeah, it was made and shown to me and asked what I thought of it. And I was really amazed that I really love the kimchi on fire. The chopsticks are needed to give it movement and to make it more obvious that it's a piece of food. And then it's kimchi and it's a flame rising out of the word Han, which is just so representative. And I thought it was so great.
Yeah, I really felt like the designer understood what you were doing, which isn't always the case.
Yeah.
And since you reference, the need to kind of highlight Han here and how much that word just kind of resonates through the novel, I wonder if you'd start us off by talking a little bit about that word, which is a Korean word and that features so importantly in the life of the Kim family.
Sure. So Han is a Korean word. It's an emotion that's very difficult to translate. You can't really translate it into one word in English. It's also like a Korean concept. I usually refer to Elaine H. Kim's definition because I think it's the original one I ever read, which is the sorrow and anger that grow from repeated experiences of oppression. That's from her really excellent essay, Home is Where the Han Is, that was published in the 1990s sometime. And it's about the LA uprising and Koreatown. Anyway, it's a great essay. Everybody should read it. But what she's
I can put a link to it on the website once the episode is live.
Yeah, great.
So folks can have that.
Home is Where the Han Is, a Korean perspective on the Los Angeles upheavals. And the oppression, the repeated experiences of oppression that's referred to is centuries of war and trauma, of colonization and occupation and national division. And I think it's really important to note that in Korea, actually, what I have, the understanding that I have is that Koreans in Korea don't really think about Han much anymore. It's considered a notion of the past, and it's not relevant to the culture anymore. It's not relevant to the Korean psyche anymore. But it is, I think, Korean Americans are very obsessed with the idea of Han. And I think that it's because this emotion, this feeling was brought with Korean immigrants when they immigrated after 1965. Koreans in Korea say that this idea sort of faded away in the 90s. So we have Korean immigrants coming after 1965 into the 90s. They brought this emotion with them, this idea with them, and it got passed down to their children and changed. I think it sort of transformed with being added to it the experience of immigration, American racism, the pressure to assimilate, and that pressure includes the pressure to forget about the past, forget about colonialism, forget about our traumatic histories. And it became this new version of Han. It became an American Han. So that's what I refer to when I titled the book American Han. It's a new type of Han, I think. Well, not super new, but it's different from Korean Han.
As you're sort of talking about it as something that is passed down, it made me think of all the different kinds of way that inheritances are handled in the novel. And it's, inheritances that are literally monetary. There are cultural and familial inheritances, and then also emotional and even epistemological inheritance. And the inheritance that Jane and Kevin carry with them everywhere is both of familial obligation to their parents who sacrificed their own desires to make a better life for their children, but it's also an inheritance of pain and anger. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the novel as an unpacking of those different kinds of inheritances.
I think each character has and deals with the things that they've inherited, and the things they've inherited are connected but different based on generation, gender, and also whether or not they immigrated or were born in America. There's slight differences, but they're all connected, and they deal with what they've taken on in different ways. Some characters are sort of blind, don't know how to absorb and deal with the things that they've inherited, and don't think about them directly. I think Jane, as we get to know her, is trying to understand a lot, trying to understand what's been passed down. And through her eyes, we see what she thinks, since it's all being narrated from her point of view, what she thinks the other family members are thinking and feeling, and the way they deal with the different things they've inherited. Like her brother Kevin has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders because he's the only son, he's the oldest child, and he's sort of the chosen one, and he's expected to succeed in monetary ways and in ways that are like he needs to represent his culture where he came from, but also be really American to show that he's succeeded at becoming American and being in success. And it's different for Kevin versus Jane. There's different expectations on them.
Well, and I want to take it to the literal inheritance, because at least at the beginning of the novel, Jane just feels a sort of deep resentment at the fact that her parents are continuing on what she sees as a very old and outdated Korean tradition that Kevin will inherit all the money of the family because he is the man. And so she sees this as, well, you're sort of getting at everything. And by the way, my mother, who hounds me constantly, adores you and you can do no wrong. But then that understanding of inheritance sort of begins to fall apart as she sort of learns more about Kevin and thinks more about the other kinds of things he had to carry that came with that inheritance. And so I'm interested to know, what it was like to kind of deal with the idea that here's this inheritance, but here's all these other things you have to carry around, Sisyphus's stone.
Yeah, I think so. Jane sort of realizes that getting that, being the boy who's going to inherit the monetary, whatever monetary aspect there even is in this family, of course, it makes her mad. But then she realizes everything that comes with it. There's a lot more pressure and responsibility on him. He's the one who's expected to make a lot of money, and that's a lot of pressure. And he doesn't know if he'll ever make a lot or make as much as his own dad did, who made it his sole purpose in life to make as much as he could as an immigrant. Just whatever I choose to do will be whatever can make me and my family the most money. And Kevin wonders if he can never meet that or surpass that, because he's not going to be allowed to just go run a little grocery store and make as much money. That's what the dad does because he's an immigrant. But because Kevin's not an immigrant, he has to do something more American, right? Like he has to do something where you make money an American-born way, where you went to school in America and went to college in America, and maybe you go to law school, maybe you go to med school, I don't know. Maybe you become an engineer. And so he has all this responsibility and pressure on him that Jane realizes she's free from. She's free from that. She has other pressures, but she doesn't have those specific ones. And she starts to see that maybe it makes her more free.
Yeah, and Kevin really resents her. He feels like she got everything because she has a certain kind of freedom from those expectations. And so it's sort of like this terrible, tragic irony that each sees the other as having gotten everything, while they themselves feel empty. And I was going to ask about one, maybe less apparent kind of inheritance that struck me a lot as someone who thinks a lot about gun violence in the United States, is that Kevin's turn to kind of interest in guns and then to his guns as a police officer feels to me like a very terrible and wicked kind of American inheritance that is this tertiary form. And I wonder if you saw that as its own specific kind of inheritance.
Yeah. So I saw that move for him becoming a police officer and what comes with it as sort of a natural progression for him, where he's tried to become a professional tennis player and he sort of breaks in, but then ends up quitting because he realizes he's never going to make a living doing that. You need to be really fully supported financially for years to make that actually become a career. And his father won't support him in that way. And so he gives up, he quits and moves into policing. And this is something that gives Kevin control. When you become a police officer, you are given a gun, you're given a uniform, and you get authority, you get control. And it's seen as a masculine role, a masculine career. And these are things that he craves. These are things that he craves and thinks he's owed as a man, and which he's been denied by his father, by America, and both from whom he seeks approval. He's been seeking approval forever. And growing up as an Asian American boy in the town that he grows up in, as an Asian American young man, he feels that the masculinity that he was owed has been denied to him by the way he's treated by his peers and by what he sees in the media. And the guns, they give him a feeling of power. And he thinks that having them and having the authority to use them will make people admire him.
K-pop Demon Hunters Haja Boys breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Spring Black Friday is on at the Home Depot. Save on grills and patio sets that will be sure to bring your hosting game up a notch. Fire up your feast with help from the Home Depot and save on grills. Like the Next Grill 4-burner propane gas grill was $249, now in special buy for $199. Or give everyone the best seat in the yard with the Hampton Bay Mayfield Park 4-piece conversation set for only $399. Save on grills and patio sets with low prices guaranteed during Spring Black Friday only at the Home Depot. Now through April 22nd, while supplies last. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
You know you need fiber for a healthy gut, but do you actually know how to get it? Quaker's been serving up fiber since 1877, with over 100 great-tasting, good source of fiber options to choose from. Whether you like old-fashioned oats, instant oatmeal, granola, or oatmeal squares, Quaker makes it delicious. So good. Get your fiber with Quaker. Shop Quaker's good source of fiber products at a store near you.
Yeah, that's a really good way to frame that, I think. And it leads me to my thoughts on kind of narratives, traditional narratives of assimilation, which I feel like this is a book that's trying to kind of break them apart and show their tropes and working pieces, and then perhaps argue for a different kind of narrative there. And that traditional story is one about resolving identity, especially a kind of like diasporic immigrant identity, into something that, is recognizable and shows a certain kind of assimilation into American society. And I wonder how you wanted to sort of take a look at that very kind of stereotypical narrative of assimilation and trouble it, and think about other ways in which we can bring different kinds of narrative to bear on it.
Yeah, I think maybe a more expected or traditional Asian American immigrant story might have the parents are usually seen as less complicated, I think, more as characters who are menacing, but we don't understand them. And it was really important to me to see where the parents are coming from, why they would act the way they act, why they say the things that they say, so we can get their history and background and understand them. And I also think that maybe more traditional immigrant narratives, the parents like this are maybe seen as like they sacrifice and they're okay with it. Like they're okay. They're okay. Like that's the point of life, is to sacrifice, and they're okay with sacrificing their lives for their children. But
yeah,
I don't think that's the way it is in real life usually. Like you're like, that's going to make you really frustrated and upset and mad that you gave up what you wanted to do with your life to just do, break your back working a job that you don't care for to make enough money for your family. I think.
I mean, it robs the parents of the fullness of human experience, in which they do regret the things they couldn't have.
Yeah. There's going to be regret. There's going to be pain. There's going to be anger about it. And sometimes you resent your own children who you're sacrificing for. And maybe there's some even, jealousy there because you wish you could switch places. Yeah. So I think that I was trying to, I think what I was mostly thinking about was it was really important to to understand all of the characters, not just Jane, the narrator. I wanted to understand the parents and the brother, Kevin, and understand what the sources of their anger was, and why they felt the way they felt, and why they did what they did.
Yeah. And I think the novel so nicely spends time kind of slowly and carefully revealing the things that generated, the person that each of the characters are. And I think that's one of the real pleasures of it, because you begin thinking very specific things about the parents based on Jane's childhood and growing up with them. And by the end, you have a pretty profound and different and much more empathetic understanding of them. Part of that, that same kind of American narrative of the immigrant experience, especially when it's talking about immigrants from Asian countries, is that that sacrifice that, as you say, is often one that is supposed to be like, if not come with a sort of pleasure in sacrifice, at least a kind of neutralness, like this is just what we do and we're not sad about it. But it will come supposedly with a freedom in the United States to be able to strive for success and stability and to join the like melting pot. Mm-hmm. And yet there's this bind, which, Jane expresses in a bunch of different ways so clearly, that no amount of fluency in language, money, or social currency will ever make them less foreign to their neighbors, to the country. And yet their parents have already struggled and sacrificed. And so there has to be some, in their minds, some good outcome from this. And so how do you think about that bind? You got the sacrifice, it's already happened, and yet here's a country that says it's never going to be enough.
Well, I think that you see this family at the beginning in their early lives in America, sort of doing what they think they have to do, trying to excel at everything, trying to become successful. But then as time goes on, they can't hold it together. Each one of them, this feeling of being trapped and doing something that you don't really want to do. And there's other things you wish you could do and not, and then realizing so much time has passed and half of your life is behind you. Then they each, except for Kevin, they each break free from that trap, or try to get to chase after their individual dreams and try to go after what they really want. The father does, the mother does. I mean, even if it's about making money and being a tycoon, that's what she always wanted but was never allowed to do. And then Jane does, and the only one who doesn't is Kevin, who's still bound. And he is the only one who isn't able to imagine a different life for himself. So I think that was my way of answering this question that you asked about being bound, and how did they deal with that, or how did I deal with this binding in the novel?
Yeah, and do you think that part of everything that happens to Kevin and his really visible sort of anger and disappointment has to do with kind of also looking at his parents, who feel as though they must kind of live miserably in order to access a world that continues to not want them? Is that part of his recognition and just like disappointment that he is still bound by this, even though it's so clear that his parents have not benefited from it?
I don't think Kevin sees any of this, actually. I don't think he really is thinking about being bound or trying to break away or see what he's doing and what the sources are. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are like that. They don't realize what is happening to them. Therapy is a great thing. I think people should go to therapy to figure this stuff out. But obviously, Kevin isn't going to therapy. He doesn't see what's happening to him, and he doesn't actively know that he's bound. I don't know the way he sees his parents. I think the way he sees his parents is like the way they want him to see them, which is that they're sacrificing, and he feels loyal to them because of the sacrifice they've done. And he feels that he should too. He feels that he should continue that, to be a good person, to be moral, I think. And he thinks he's doing that. And I don't think he realizes how much anger he has, and then it explodes in that moment we read about.
One of the things that most interested me about the sort of revelations about Kevin's anger and disquiet, which, as you say, perhaps he doesn't even really understand totally himself, is the way that Jane views it through his dominance in tennis, at least up to a point. And that is that she senses that it's a kind of revenge against the culture that constantly rejects him, pushing himself to the absolute limit in crushing an opponent to feel like a punishment against a culture that would always make Kevin into Long Duck Dong from 16 Candles, no matter how much they sacrificed. And I wonder how tennis became that sort of metaphoric way to understand Kevin, perhaps better than Kevin understands himself.
Yeah. So it's funny because tennis, the stereotype about an Asian American family might be that there's a parent who's pushing him to play tennis and win at tennis, but he actually loves it. I mean, he loves it. He makes it his life. That's all he wants to be and do. And partly it's because he's so good at it. He's better than all his peers. And so it gives him identity. It makes him proud of himself. It's something to feel good about. And then to be better at everyone at it, nobody can be putting him down about when he's playing tennis in that town. He's the best. So it's so important to him. And yeah, it's a way for him to crush his peers where they can't say anything bad about him when it comes to tennis because they all want to be good at tennis too. They're just not as good at it as he is. So yeah, it is a sort of, it feels really like satisfying for him when he plays tennis and when he wins. It's just that to actually become a professional, you'd have to reach it's nearly impossible to become, a top 10, top 20 tennis star where you're actually making a living doing that. You have to be, you can't just be the small town or even a state champion. It's like you just have to go beyond, which most people can't reach. But at least for his community, tennis it's like his key to acceptance, I think, and also domination.
Have you ever read David Foster Wallace's essay on the tennis player Michael Joyce?
I don't know if I've read that one. I have read some of his tennis articles.
That's just his one. I mean, I think it's one of the great kind of representations of the sort of sacrifices that a truly great tennis player will make and still never, ever, crest anything like a kind of living wage or even a reasonable day-to-day life because of how much is asked to them again and again. And I kept thinking about Kevin and this essay together because he's so good, but even being so good is not enough. And that's such a great metaphor for the immigrant experience that you can be so good at being an American and it's still never enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
And this, tennis will actually sort of extend out as a metaphor in a really horrifying way in this act of violence that Kevin perpetrates that I'm going to leave the details out because I feel like it's so important to the novel that they remain for the end. But just to say that Jane sees in that violence a replication of that sort of desire for dominance and chasing away the ghosts and expectations of the culture. And that it felt painful to read. And I wonder if it felt painful to write it.
Yes, it was. I think it was painful to write it. I think you're talking about the violence of that scene. I think I have violent scenes. It is painful to write them, but maybe not as painful as it might be for someone else because I'm not afraid. Like they're also easy to write in a way. Like it's hard to write them, but because there's so much violence. But I find it also quite easy to write. I can't really explain how this has come about, but maybe I actually like watching. I watch when I go to bed. Sometimes I watch very violent movies. I don't know if that says something about me. It helps me like calm or go to, it probably means there's something wrong with me, but
no.
I somehow find it easy and difficult at the same time. I can write a lot of detail, but yeah, sure, it is painful to write them at the same time.
Well, before I let you go, Lisa, I'd love to know a little bit what you've been reading and loving recently, and if you have any recommendations for my listeners.
Sure. So there are a couple of debut novels, actually, that just came out that I haven't finished, but I just got copies of and I've started reading. One of them is by Giada Scodelario. Her novel is called Ruin's Child, and it came out with New Directions. I really love it because it breaks from traditional narrative forms. It's this experimental novel that uses fiction and poetry and essay, and it has this collage effect. It's about 6 Black women living together in a derelict apartment tower somewhere in New York City. And it's just, I'm really looking forward to finishing it.
New Directions it is so innovative in the kind of writing they put out. And I feel like it should be just constantly on everyone's TBR. New Directions needs to have a bigger place there.
They have great stuff, and they have a first novel prize, which I believe is what this novel won. Another book that just came out is with Astra House, which also puts out really great books. This one's called The Oldest Bitch Alive, which is just a great title.
That's amazing.
It's an Indie Next pick, and it's just like, the hook on this book is just so great. So it's told from the point of view of an elderly French bulldog who has been infected by parasitic worms. And the dog at some point experiences an existential awakening. So it just seems like with that one sentence, it's just, you have to read that. It's just so annoying.
How can you not? I mean, That's like one of the best titles ever. Well, those are great, Lisa, and I'm excited for both of them and glad that you're giving space to, other presses. And I want to just really encourage my listeners to run out and get American Han by Lisa Lee. I just found it to be a really profound meditation on sacrifice and inheritance and the way in which a culture can demand so much of its immigrants and often give back so little. And it was a real pleasure to talk to you about it.
Thank you so much for making time for me and having me on your podcast.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you. Well, that's all from me for now. My thanks to Lisa Lee for coming on to talk about her debut novel, American Han. You can find links to purchase American Han and all of Lisa's recommended books at the website burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, and now YouTube, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.